This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, 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 I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine all over the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, let it shine all over the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine all over the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, 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 I'm gonna
Well, that is awesome. And I understand that went even better than the practices went. So it's always good. It's always good when it shows up on the given day that you got to go live, right? That's awesome, isn't it? And one of the little guys said, "Can I wave at my mom? Can I wave at my dad?" And hopefully you got a few waves, and we get to wave at you too this morning. I have a pretty good crowd here this morning in spite of the weather, don't we? Thank you for coming. It is Christmas. It is nice to have a place to go, a warm place to go, preferably that you can get to without getting stuck, right? So thank God for all the plow men and women who are out there working. And I think probably for the first time since I've been here 8 years ago or so, I've never shoveled my driveway twice in the same day. But I did yesterday. So it just kept coming, didn't it? Wow. Would not stop. We're going to talk this morning out of a passage that really, it's not a Christmas passage as such, but then again, it's all about Christmas in 1 Corinthians 13. We wouldn't have Christmas if it wasn't for love, if it wasn't for God's love. And this morning, it ties nicely into a series we've been doing on the book of 1 Corinthians. And we just talk right out of the Bible here each week. And it just so happens that, and it does so many times, that the what's going on in the current events of our day synchronizes so well with what I'm talking about in the Bible. And I'm going to be talking to you about love. Love. And today, I'm going to give you an opportunity in the service at the end to actually enthrone love. To actually say, you know what? I want to make love the rule of my life. I'm tired of hating. I'm tired of grudge holding. I'm tired of being mean to people. Or I'm tired of neglecting my responsibilities and not showing love in that way. Today, I want to enthrone love. I'll give you an opportunity to do that. When you study the Bible and you look at the concepts of love, as we think about English, and our language gives us one word for love, L-O-V-E, all right? And we can say, I love ice cream, or I love Christmas cookies, or I love shoveling the driveway, or I love the snow, or I love and I love and I love. And we really don't have a way beyond context to really understand the precise nature of love that we are referring to. Because we throw love around pretty easy, don't we, that word. But love from a Corinthian context, from a Greek context, from a first century context, it wasn't just thrown around haphazardly. In fact, there were actually terms used to specify the precise nature of what you were loving when you used the word. And so if you agape love someone, then you had the highest love for them. You did everything for their best interest. And it wasn't based on feelings. It wasn't based on shallow reasons for doing what you were doing. It was the highest form of love. If you phileo love someone, brotherly love, you phileoed your brother, right? Someone who you're related to and you have a brotherly love. And I do hope that if you have brothers and sisters and siblings, you'll not write them out of this holiday, that you'll include them in the holiday season, especially, really all the time, but especially at Christmas. And then there was the word eros, or sexual or sensual love. This is what men and women do with each other. And then there was a fourth term, and a lot of people don't know this one. It's storge, or it's family love. It's the love of a mother for a child. So agape, phileo, eros, storge, all words that would have been familiar to Corinthians in 54 AD. And when Paul writes this incredible chapter on 1 Corinthians 13, the topic of love, in every occurrence, he uses the word agape. Every time. And that word agape appears 10 times between the end of chapter 12, the beginning of chapter 14, 10 times Paul says, I want you to love with the highest form of love. More than just a brother, more than just a sexual thing with another person, even more than just the sentimental love that a parent can have for a child. I want this community, this new community in Corinth, to be about agape. And so he's casting a vision for a better fellowship. And we're going to open our gifts, our spiritual gifts, in upcoming days. It may even be after Christmas then when we begin to open these gifts. But we'll open them in 1 Corinthians 12 and 1 Corinthians 14. But know that Paul nests in this conversation, this essay on spiritual gifts. He nests or embeds this incredible encomium of love, and he personifies love. He nests it between the brackets of spiritual gift topics. And he said, you know what, while I'm writing on this, can I just share with you, he says in so many words, what's something even more important than flashy spiritual gifts? Can I just share with you a higher calling that everybody needs to travel? And, you know, back when I was growing up, I'm from like the Dionne Warwick generation. Remember Dionne Warwick? Yeah. What the world needs now is love, sweet love, right? That's what we need. Yeah. She sang it, and we've been singing about it ever since. And not only that, but when I think of the topic of love, I think about John Wesley, and I've studied quite a bit about Wesley and his teachings, in fact. And he always talked about perfect love. Wasn't love, it's kind of a bad term to use nowadays because we all have an aversion for that which people say they're perfect, and it just kind of turns us off. But when he talked about perfect love, what did he mean? A mature love. A love with purity of intent. It wasn't always a perfect love in that it couldn't grow any. No, it was a purity of intent. And that's what I think Paul is getting after here. Yeah, the world needs love. Dionne tells us that. But I think Wesley does even more back a few more centuries or so ago from even Dionne Warwick. And he understood that what the world needs is love, not just any kind of love, but a mature love. And even many, many centuries before that, we have a Paul that rises up and says, you know what? The greatest thing we could ever need or would want to do is to love. And so Paul nests this embedded essay on love, and the entire letter stems from a refusal to love. And so Paul, I think he's not only getting at the importance of love when contrasted with spiritual gifts, but I think he's also getting to a place in the book where he's like, you know what would resolve all of these issues in the letter? All of the issues we've talked about for like the last 12 chapters? Love. If you would just agape, it would resolve itself. Right? And so the question before us this morning is this: does the way I use my spiritual gift and ability radiate love? That's the immediate context. A further layer beyond it, and equally as applicable, is the question: does love spill out from my lifestyle in all that I do? Not just in exercising my spiritual gifts, but in every lifestyle area. Does agape rule there? Have I enthroned love? 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1, slide number 4, we see that Paul says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels. And notice that Paul says, if I, personal pronoun first person, if I do this. In other words, he's not going to say, if you Corinthians would speak in this and not have love, you're nothing. He's not accusing. He's not wanting to unnecessarily offend them. Instead, he says, I'm going to use me as an illustration. And if I the Apostle Paul speak in the tongues of men or of angels. And the statement included every imaginable mode of speech. It might be the tongues of men and high oratorical skill that could hold you spellbound for hours. Or it might be a prayer language. And we're going to be talking about these in upcoming messages. We'll dig deeper into the gifts. Like I said, we'll be opening them. And when we cover 1 Corinthians 12 and 14, specifically, I will talk more at that time about glossolalia, which is a Greek word that references a prayer language or a speaking in tongues, as some would refer to it. And as Paul references it in his letter. But that's not our topic today. We'll get there. But Paul says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Right. There we go. All right. See how jarring that was? Okay. There's actually more clang in that, but you just got one big clang there. Okay. So that's the way it is when we exercise a spiritual gift like this and not have love. In fact, the pagan worshipers would hit these huge gongs as they went into the pagan house of worship. Boom! And then they would put the hammer down and they would walk in. And one of the thoughts was that it would wake up and stir up the aforementioned deity, whatever that deity was. It would snap that deity to attention, and then they would be best able to listen and receive the worshiper's petition. And Paul says, he borrows from that. And he says, the best speeches that man can give, the most intense, mysterious prayer language that a man or woman could utter, is merely empty shallows of pagan worship without love. And some in the church were determined to make prayer language a central focus in their house church meetings. And Paul has to confront it. And without a lifestyle of love to go with it, it's more jarring and disruptive than loving and kind, Paul says. And so we'll deal with this further, but Paul mentions prayer language or tongue speaking here, and he mentions it first in his list. And when you mention something first in your list, it usually means it's the biggest problem. And so as we look at the next 2 or 3 verses in 1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 3, when we look at this prelude to this chapter on love, we see an ascending list. So he starts out with the gifts that are sensational, the gifts that can actually perhaps bring you more accolades and attention than other gifts. And then he just keeps stepping it up a tick. So he shows us in an ascending order. He starts at the bottom and he works his way up. And he says, if you do all these wonderful things without love, you're nothing. It accomplishes nothing. Okay? So he puts this prayer language at the bottom of his list. Well, verse 2, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, it's an idiom for doing what's impossible, but do not have love, I am nothing. And so if you thought prayer language was great in Corinth, and many of them did, and we're not denigrating the contribution of that, okay? But he says, if you think this is a sensational gift, and you also, think that's wonderful, let me up it a tick. If you think that moving mountains is a gift, and that uttering prophecies is a gift, and it seems that all of these gifts have the possibility and potential of accruing greater glory for the individual. He says you can pray in a prayer language, you can move mountains, you can understand and utter prophetic mysteries, but guess what? Without love, it's nothing. So he ups it a tick. He's not done climbing his list. You think prayer language is great? You think moving mountains is great? You think prophetic utterances are great? I'll go up another level. He says, verse 3, slide 5, if I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship, some translations translate it burned. If I'm martyred, that I may boast, but I do not have love, I gain nothing, he says. So if you thought prayer language and moving mountains was great, you're really going to be amazed at those who give away everything they own, right? Including their very lives. And so Paul tops out his ascending list order here with those who pay the ultimate sacrifice. And so if you lost your life as a martyr, the church would more than likely memorialize you and declare you to be a hero. And at the onset of this greatest chapter on love in the Bible, really, when it comes to talking about the topic, of course, the greatest example is Christ. But when it comes to talking about this topic, Paul is endeavoring to introduce a new kind of mathematics for the church at Corinth. And it's a mathematics that goes like this: spiritual gift minus love equals 0. And what's interesting is that Paul's choice of which gifts to contrast with love in this ascending list, his choice represents, it's very telling, it shows us what the Corinthians were valuing. Because there were many other spiritual gifts at work in the body. But Paul chose these specific ones. Why? Because the Corinthians were swooning over them. These are the gifts that get you attention and notice. And these are the things that people tend to want to have and to see and to experience. So Paul understands this, and so he isolates these specific gifts. He presents them in an ascending order. And so Paul doesn't negate all the other gifts that are equally as important as these. He just takes what is most important to the Corinthians in 54 AD, their preferred gifts, and he builds a contrast to it. And so love, he's going to go on to say, endures forever. He will go on to teach how that some of the gifts in the new age, when it arrives, some of them will cease, he says later in the chapter. So don't get too attached to your gift, he seems to say. In fact, what else he seems to say is that you can do something even greater than you thought you could do. He says, if you really want to see God dwelling in a person, he's saying, don't look for prayer language speaking. Don't look for prophetic utterances or great messages preached. Don't look for great heroic sacrificial acts. He says, look for love. That's the giveaway. That's how you know that a person is in fact maturing in their faith and that are bringing a perspective of maturity to life and relationships. Love is patient, verse 4. So that's the passive side of agape. It's patient. You wait. Sometimes you want to tear into someone, and that's a temptation at Christmas. You finally see relatives you haven't seen for a long time, and this has been brewing a long time, and you just want to rip into them and set them straight and tell them how it's going to go this holiday. Agape says, no, wait. Be patient. Sometimes maybe you're a young man, a young woman, and you're so anxious to experience eros love. And you want that so badly. And agape love steps in and says, no, wait. Be patient. This is not the route to go in your first date. Be patient. You see. Or, love is not just passive. Let's move on. Love is kind, the text says. So there's a passive side to love. And of course, for the Corinthians and their context, it's like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to offer my spiritual gift. I'm going to make sure they see me. Or I'm going to take this freedom and I'm going to engage in this liberty I have and going to make sure that, people know I'm free in this area of life. to do whatever it is I think I want to do. Wait. Give it some time. Okay? And like I said, that's the passive side of agape. The active side of agape is love is kind. It shows in how you treat someone. It doesn't just sit and do nothing, as sometimes agape does. But it engages. It gets up off the couch and it engages. And it does something. And, love is patient. That tells us agape love is slow to become resentful or to strike back or to get physical with someone on the first date, as I've shared. But kindness recognizes that everyone carries a heavy load and that maybe I can help lighten that load a little this Christmas. A coach in our community was telling me how he and his young players were wrapping up a practice on a hot day here in Ligonier. And someone who attends this church was out running, and they saw them, and they told the ice cream man to give the whole team whatever they wanted. And I know it's hard to think about ice cream right now, but bear with me. Okay, this was pictured back in the hot summer, okay? Back when things were pretty warm, toasty. And these little guys are so tired, these athletes. And this guy's running, and he stops, and he sees these guys. He says, the ice cream man, he said, come here a minute. Every one of these kids deserve ice cream. Make sure they get it. You're going up the road, make this right. Here's where I live. I'll pay you there. I'll meet you there. And that touched me. That's kindness. That's what that is. Sometimes love does that for no other reason, just because. Well, now, love is positive, and in the positive side of it, it's patient and kind. It waits sometimes, or it gets up and it activates sometimes. That's agape. But there's an awful lot that agape love is not. Capital N, capital O, capital T. Is not. What are the things that agape love is not? Well, there's like a staccato listing here, a staccato string of things that love is not. And it comes in staccato fashion. That's what I think about when I hear staccato. One after the other, after the other. It does not envy, boast, proud. It is not proud. Gets a rhythm going with it. Okay? It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Envy was behind much of the party strife in the Corinthian church. And love, agape, does not boast. It is not proud. Boasting and arrogance are the biggest problems in any group or organization. When you come across as boastful or arrogant, agape love confronts that boasting and that proclivity to arrogance, and it makes everybody in the world, cater to maybe what I think the world should be. And agape love says, I can relax with who I am. I don't have to be the life of the party to feel secure. I don't always have to be on the stage sharing my spiritual gift. I don't always have to be in a limelight, or I don't always have to be the focus of every Christmas party, and I don't always have to create drama in the family, because this has been happening a long time, and it's time we finally get it out in the open. And not that there's not a place and a time for that, but some people will boast, they are arrogant, and agape love doesn't do that. It has a quiet rest to it. Love does not dishonor others. It doesn't show up at Corinthian meetings in 54 AD and throw off the head covering and disrespect the husband and totally is oblivious to what maybe the impact they're having, without being sensitive to the cultural environment of their time. And the only way you're going to understand that is you've come with me all through all these messages, okay? But that's what I'm saying, and that's what Paul is saying. It's not dishonoring to others. That's not agape. It's not self-seeking. I think we all know what that means. My bulldog is self-seeking. Okay? You want to know what a self-seeker looks like? Put him up, guys. This is the guy that's self-seeking right here. Okay? He's the self-seeker. And a lot of people are like him. You know, you give that guy a little spoonful of peanut butter, he'll take your hand off if you try to get close to that, right? Or at least he acts like it. He's got his sergeant hat on. And he's like, you know, gives you that stare. It's not just this way. He doesn't just look at, he does this. Okay? He's like, he won't look. He's like this. And he's looking all the while. It's like, you're going to come 1 centimeter closer, you're getting it. Okay? And he does it like this. He just look out the corner of his eye. And you know he's serious when he does that. Okay? And I think we get that way. People get that way. You know, their neck gets rigid. The hackles get up. They start growling in a low tone. This is my show. This is my show. Don't you do that. This is my party. You know. Make my day. All right? I'm irritated by your presence, and I want you to know it. Huh? We don't do that, though. 2013, December, Ligonier stuff, do we? We never let anyone know we're irritated with their presence, do we? No. No, of course not. Right? Listen, based on Paul's letter, we can see their angry attitudes start to emerge based on the topics he writes about in this powerful letter. And these things, you know, this hymn to love, it gets quoted at weddings and things, and it really fits in a lot of different occasions. But it's not like he's writing the hymn to love in a vacuum. He's got all of these problems, these Corinthian mess-ups in his head when he pens this piece on agape love. And so all this stuff was happening. They were boasting. They were arrogant. They were self-seeking. They were easily angered. They were keeping records of wrong. They were dishonoring others. They were envious and proud and rarely ever patient. And kindness? No. And so what I'm sensing in the text is that Paul is writing this powerful essay to confront these kinds of attitudes that have been festering in the body for quite some time now. And Paul is getting reports on this stuff. And he's like, I can't wait till I arrive in an actual visit. I've got to pen something now, shoot it out in the mail, because this is a Christmas letter they got to get. Otherwise, it's going to mess up everything. And so he gets it written and he shoots it out. And when we look at this and analyze this letter, we get these angry attitudes, these anti-agape attitudes. And they start coming out. And it sounds something like this: I am not going to be relegated to the sidelines with my spiritual gift. I am, and again, I'm considering all the chapter content of the book. I am not going to play second fiddle to others who may have the same spiritual gift as me. And it's only a true church if it makes my spiritual gift central. If it's not central, not a true church. And the attitude went further, okay? That's the context for this. But the attitude it spills out further. And it says, you know, I am not going to wear that head covering thing, and don't you even think about talking to me about it. I am not going to love my wife who disrespects me in public. I'm not going to love her because she disrespects me in public. I am not going to curb my spiritual freedoms for some weak-minded dude who has some crazy issue with a pagan barbecue sandwich. I am not curbing my freedom for them. Okay? I will use my freedoms and enjoy them And if I do get addicted to something, it's my life, not yours, Paul. And if I want to abandon the weekly gatherings, drink my Christmas away, and use my downtime to get stoned, what is that to you? And I don't have to wait for some lowly slave who works at the boat docks to arrive before I can eat supper, and I don't care if it is in Jesus' memory. It's my house. This is Corinth. Take the halo off the book. This is how it went. Okay? I am not going to receive communion from that patron leader, or I refuse to let the church confront me or my lifestyle choices. And if I want to present as a different gender, I'll do it. If I want to hook up with my stepmom, 1 Corinthians 5, I'll do it. If I want to hang out in the pagan temples and taverns and meet the pagan girls, I'll do it. And I positively, absolutely will not allow an unmarried Apostle Paul to tell me, married, how to use my sexuality or what my role in life may be, or give to me any advice on raising my family. That's Corinth. And I ask you, Stone Tillers, is that love? And if they didn't show these angry outbursts of defiance, per the text, easily angered. If they didn't show these angry outbursts of defiance, they went underground and they quietly marinated their hurt, and they kept track so that they could have ammunition for the next verbal war, the next Christmas party gathering. I'd have all this ammunition, and so I'm going to keep track of this records of wrong stuff, and then I'll be able to uncork it when they even think about getting more brownies than they should have, or whatever. You see, it didn't matter to them if God had not counted their sins against them by virtue of Christ. They were keeping count. Right? They were keeping count of all the wrongs. They were journaling about them. They were noting them in a nice accounting fashion. They got their ledger set up. They got their items listed line by line. They could savor the hate a little more. And just in case they might forget something along the way over the years, they could go back every Christmas and get that journal out and read that journal and just look at what the family did to me all these years. And just relive the hate a little more. Paul says, it's not agape. Okay? Keeping count of wrongs allows us to take advantage of another's guilt, I might add. And it keeps people enslaved to their past. Like, you don't ever want to let them get over something. That's human nature. You made a boo-boo, a mistake. And we're here to serve as reminders of that. It's our job, our calling, to let you know you made a mistake and you're going to live this. You'll never live it down in our community. You know what Paul says? Is that love? Is that Jesus-like? Is that agape? You know, as mean as people were to Paul, and we can look at this in other places, especially 2 Corinthians, I never get the idea or the feeling that the man is bitter over it. I mean, he was treated like dirt. And he never gets bitter. He calls out to the Lord. He counts it a privilege to suffer for the gospel's sake. And I think what you're seeing in this chapter is Apostle Paul at his finest. He learned to let the ledgers go. He just threw away the journals of hate. When Jesus came into his life in full measure, okay, and begin to control things. Hurrying on here, slide 6, verse 6. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. That's agape. Agape love absorbs evil without calculating how to retaliate. You know, and I think Paul is going well beyond the worship gathering now. I've stated as much. You know, love spills out over worship boundaries and gatherings. It's a way of life. You know, there's an emotion of joy. Praise God. There's an emotion of joy because the relationships in your life are built on truth, not lies and deception anymore. And so love can rejoice in it. Christmas gatherings are great because you got Christ and He's giving you a new life. And there's a new way you're going to treat people as a result of it, to flesh it out. And there's no lying or deceiving. There's no secrets going down on the side. It's like John Wesley all over again. Perfect love or mature love is love with a pure motive. You don't have to question the motive of one who is enthroned love. Their motive is pure. They may not speak, but it's not because they're being unkind. It's just that maybe they just got news or they just read a text and what their college kid shared with them so flabbergasted them, they're in shock and they can't speak. Okay? We don't know the details of how and when and where and why. We can't figure all of this out. But when you're dealing with a person who is enthroned agape love, then you know that no matter what unexplainable behavior I may see, I know and trust the intent of the person. They have purity of intent. They don't go around trying to pass off social insults and innuendos to try to leverage and try to make someone that we're unhappy with them. That's not agape. And you learn to trust someone like that because when you enthrone agape, you just know they've committed to it. I can trust them. And so there's rejoicing, the emotion of joy, because love is their guide. Their character is such that you know they would never take a cheap shot. And so love always protects. Agape always protects. Verse 7. I'm going to believe the very best about a person. And I know, and so a lot of times, I think it goes like this in our head. And if it doesn't, it probably needs to, because this is how agape thinks, okay? Agape says, I'm going to believe the very best about a person, and I know you want me to isolate them and be mean to them and to express my disapproval socially, but I choose to believe that the very best about them. I'm going to choose to believe it that way. And if you are demanding that I do all these mean things socially, I will still, in fact, endeavor to believe the very best about you. Even though you appear to be doing what no true friend should ever do to another friend. That's agape. I'm going to believe the best about them. I'll believe the best about you too. Even though you're trying to get me to do what agape should not do. That's maturity. That's love. Love always protects. Agape always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. You see, love covers. And when it does learn something unpleasant, maybe about another or a family member, when you are offended over someone's action or something like that, love does not run and scatter it all over the neighborhood. Love covers it. Love covers it. No, love isn't gullible, and love isn't easily deceived, and love doesn't deny issues of justice and fairness and all those things. No, it doesn't deny those things. But love covers a multitude of sins. One of my favorite quotations comes from the pen of a guy by the name of C.S. Lewis. I think he's probably overquoted. But I think one of the reasons why is that he actually has some very perceptive insights into a lot of topics, especially love. And this is one of my favorite quotations on love. I think it gets at the issue of agape love better than any other that I've seen. Granted, it's a little wordy. But I think when you read through it with me on the screen, if you can see it, I had to kind of make it small. Otherwise, it's best to see the whole thing in one view. So I got it on one slide here. Let me read it out loud if you're having trouble seeing it on the screen. I'll just read it out loud. Just listen to this. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. Now the contrast Lewis offers. And it goes like this. But in that casket, know this. In that casket, where you have wrapped yourself up and isolated yourself and cut yourself off from family and friends and Christmas things with people probably you ought to be meeting with at least probably more than once a year anyway. But when you isolate and you wrap yourself up and you have these little distracting hobbies to help you get through a day or a week, he says, when you lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness, in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, something changes. And it will not be broken. It will become unbreakable. Impenetrable. Irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. And I have a feeling some of you have chosen not to love anymore because you've been hurt so deeply. But Lewis says he invites us out of our caskets and our tombs. And he says it's worth the risk. Unless you love, you're not even fully human because you're made to love. And you're made to be loved. And without the opportunity and willingness to love, a person tends to become cold and bitter and uncaring and nonchalant and even cruel, kind of like Scrooge. A person with no love becomes fixated on things. Things in life that don't matter when compared to the relationships in your life. And love, you see, is what you've been through with somebody. Mature love is loving the one through whom the hurt has come. You can't mature love any other way unless you've been hurt by it. You can't love in slices either. You can't love like you eat your fruit cake. I'll pick out only the things I like and not just kind of push the other things to the side. How many of you love fruit cake? Not very many hands went up. Okay. For the longest time, I've struggled with fruit cake. God forgive me for all the fruit cakes people have given me over the years. These wonderful parishioners who've loved me, cared for me, and they've given me fruit cake. And I've taken maybe like just a couple bites of it so I can say it was really good. And then I've just discarded the rest of it. God, forgive me. And we do that with people. I'll pick what I like. I'll discard what I don't like. You can't love in slices. You can't pick and choose. You've got to take the good with the bad with people. That's what agape does. That's what it's about. Well, I like this thing about them and this thing, but I can't stand that thing. And because of that thing, that's all the focus, and they're out of the picture, and they're not getting invited, and other people's presents are this big, and their presents that big. Because they got to know I don't like it. All right. We're preaching, right? And think about this furthermore. If you do something that is great in life, like use a spiritual gift or preach a message, or move mountains, or some great, wonderful thing, and you have no one to share it with in the moment, will your big moment really be that big of a deal? if you've not loved people and have no one there to celebrate it with you? You pray in a language, nobody's here to hear it. Nobody's in a small group to hear it. You've not loved them, right? You preach a great message. Well, how fun would it be for me to preach one of the greatest messages you've ever heard on love? And there's nobody here to hear it. How great is that? Paul says it's nothing. Or you die in a foreign land and there's no one to applaud because you run them all off in your life because you never would love anybody. Loving the friend or family member is more important than impressing them. So don't worry about the Christmas letter and trying to impress people from afar. Don't. Just be real. And rather than try to impress your friends this Christmas, why don't you just try to love them like they've never been loved? So don't shut people out this Christmas. Don't refuse to take your kids to see their family. Don't stay home and eat sugar cookies alone again. Don't resist or I would just say resist the urge. Resist the urge to go to the garage and drink. Refuse the impulse to nurse your wound one more minute, one more holiday. Get out of the casket or coffin of your selfishness. Live and love and move on and enthrone agape love once and for all in your life, to where every motive of your life, while it may not be 100% pure, it can be pretty close to being purity of intent, that everything you do is meant for good, not for harm. Enthrone love this morning, this Christmas. Go ahead. Enthrone it. And what you'll find is that love is best presented and understood in the personality of Jesus. Enthrone Jesus. I think when we hear something like this, and I'm just going to stop right here in the text because I want to wrap it up here. So we'll deal with some of the other verses another time. But when we look at love like this, what it is not, agape love, and how it calls us out to a brand new way of doing relationships and life and church, I think we have to ask the question, am I growing in love? And looking back over another year, am I easier to live with now than I was before? And am I able to handle people more graciously, more courteously? Am I more compassionate, more patient? Have I thought and believed the best about people? You know, Natalie Grant is a song writer and singer that I enjoy, and she's making some wonderful contributions in that world, in the world of Christian music, or music that is Christian in its values. I'll say it that way. And she wrote a song called Burn Bright. And originally it was a letter to her nephew struggling with an addiction who lived in Seattle. And her sister called her, Natalie Grant's sister called and said, "My son is addicted and I need you to pray for him. I don't know what to do." And he had been a star athlete in high school. He had broken his back playing sports, and it ended his dream of playing collegiately and a lot of other things. And so to kind of get through it, he started with painkillers, and then someone gave him a drug, and it was one thing after another, and it sapped his life away from him. His eyes grew dark. His energy was gone. He eventually just collapsed. And Natalie's sister and her husband watched their son sink under the load of all of it. And finally, her nephew regained some strength, but it was only strength enough to run away, and he disappeared. And Natalie started thinking, well, what would I say to my nephew? Natalie, a songwriter, a lyricist. What would I say to him in a few words if I could somehow communicate the love of God to him? And so she sat down and wrote a letter, and it became a song. And in the song, You're going to listen to it in a minute, and I'm going to invite you to come forward and enthrone love in your life. And while you're listening to the song, you're going to hear the cry of a heart for her nephew and for all the broken in the world. And I think Natalie Grant's letter to her nephew, it also applies to people struggling in our community, in your family, people struggling with self-worth and depression, people struggling with alcohol abuse, people struggling with loneliness, especially this time of year. And sometimes we all need a reminder of what we were made for. And this morning, love is what you were made for. It's what you crave. It's who God is. It's His essence. We never see God by definition defined. God is wrath. God is hate. God is this. God. It's always God is love. That's who He is. And it's who you need this morning, because God bridged the gap between two worlds, and He very graciously slipped onto our planet and into time-space history a little baby boy that came with the exclusive message of saying, I am love. And we need reminders of that sometimes at Christmas time. And we need reminded that maybe there's a higher way. That if we enthrone love, it could be what a pleasant difference that would make at Christmas this year. And so, don't let love be quenched out of your life by drugs, by hate, by social ostracization. Don't let love be squeezed out of your life. Love with reckless abandon. Love even the haters. Would you this morning like to burn bright with love again? Allow Christ to reignite the quenched flame of love as we listen to Natalie Grant sing the song, Burn Bright. Natalie's nephew eventually listened to that song that she sent to him, a letter and the song. And her sister said that we had the best family conversation we had had in 5 years after he heard this song. Because he finally, love broke through. Maybe this morning you need love to break through. If you'd like to enthrone love, why don't you just come up, just stand in the front. When the song is done, I'll pray for you and we'll let you go. Play that song, guys. Just listen and listen to the Lord's whisper in all of it.
Lately I don't recognize you. The fire in your eyes is fading into embers. So while you're out there in the darkness, I'm praying you'll remember you were made to shine. You were made for life. Even if you've lost your way, turn and you will hear love say, you were made for more, so much more. Child of everlasting light, made to blaze away the night. So baby, burn bright, burn bright. You can rise up from the ashes, make something beautiful of all the broken pieces. And I'm believing you'll come running into the arms of Jesus. You were made to shine. You were made for life. Even if you've lost your way, turn and you will hear love say, you were made for more, so much more. Child of everlasting light, made to blaze away the night. So baby, child of everlasting light, made you blaze away the night. So baby, burn bright, burn bright, oh, burn bright, oh, burn bright. I believe in you'll come running into the arms of Jesus.
Every time I hear that, I just want to cry. You're here and you're lined up this morning, and you're here in the sanctuary choosing love. This morning, let's just pray as we wrap up our day. Father, thank you for this morning, and thank you for love. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for loving humanity so unconditionally as you have loved us. And this morning that song touches us deeply because I know that there are parents who ache and who have wept this holiday season over a child that was created to burn bright. And that light has been dimmed. And it's not as bright as it could be. And the parents ache. They ache. And I ask and pray for them this morning that you'll give them hope and peace. And there's a reason why those who have got out of their seats this morning and they're standing in front of this church and they're lined up and some are holding hands and they recognize that some major truth has been expressed this morning. Some major concept has been presented, and somehow they're realizing that it truly is the best way to live life. And something in them wants to respond to it. And I ask and pray that these who have been a part of our message this morning, seated or standing, that something in them would shift and that they would agape love and enthrone agape love this morning. We appreciate the brotherly love of life. We appreciate the eros of life. We appreciate the storge love of life. But this morning we can't do life without agape. To be loved and to love. And I ask and pray whatever lifeless casket or tomb has encrusted our hearts, dear God, that you would break in with your light and you would burn bright in our hearts. And I just pray this morning that these who are making commitments, standing and in the seats, wherever we are in the sanctuary, that when we walk out of this place today, we will have enthroned agape and would be so drawn to the light of it that we will never cease to grow in it and have purity of intent in all that we do. So God, I pray this over this group today. Right now, you would release a flow of agape in the lives of these individuals. And that you wouldn't just give them a little bit of it. There would be a lot of your presence, a lot of you. All of you could be realized. And love would flow out of them in waves. And wave after wave after wave. Not just sentimental, gushy emotion. But the agape love. The highest unconditional form of love that you've written about here. Lord, we ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you.